Sound speeds, and welcome back to Speed Bumps. This is episode 31, unless my counting has suddenly gone completely wrong. Really don't have any information to report here this day here at the start of the video, so why don't we waste no more time and get right into our content. For our first topic, I thought we would discuss why listening is unique, and I don't mean this from a perspective of why sound department people have a unique experience. I mean, that's pretty obvious. There are 3 people on set that care anything about the sound, and everyone else is there for picture. You could say, well, the director, the producers, and everybody does care about sound, but only if it doesn't sacrifice a shot. Like, for example, if you are trying to get a shot at dusk or at golden hour, they say, we got to get this shot, otherwise we're going to have to come back here tomorrow. That's going to cost a lot of money to do with the company. And so they're going to want to try to get that shot at whatever cost they possibly can before the sun sets. And if that means sacrificing a little bit of sound because they have to have some sort of Ritter fan or noisemaker on, then they'll do it. I mean, they'll ADR it quick as they need to in order to properly get what they need to out there for a shot. Especially if there's a situation that means it's going to cost a lot of money later. With very few exceptions, some directors will say it's got to all work. Now, I'm not even referring to the fact that when you talk to children, you say, I need you to listen to me, and then they're like, yeah, I hear you. They're not focusing on you. They're not engaging their brain while they're picking up acoustic vibrations. That's what listening is actually engaging your brain and listening to someone who's talking. It's not the same thing as just hearing somebody, because you can hear that someone is talking in a room, but literally tune out everything they're saying to the point where you don't know anything that they're actually saying. Believe me, I've done it many times. And proof the pudding is whenever I come home from work and I tune out my family, unfortunately, they're talking to me and I'm just in my own little world, and they're like, Dad, did you hear me? I'm like, huh? What? What do you mean? And I will say, yeah, I heard you. I wasn't listening. And anyway, so no, I'm not referring to anything like that. What I'm referring to is as a sense, listening and involving your brain, of course, is unique. We have 5 senses. We have sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. Now, going down each one of them, you could say that physically you must sample something with touch or taste in order to actually get a sense of it. Now, vision, as long as you have line of sight, you just cannot obscure the view of somebody. I don't want to cover up my eyes while I'm driving down the road. You don't want to do that because it will obstruct your view, and therefore you cannot see. That is, you could basically see infinitely away as long as there's no obstructions. Like how we were able to see light years away into outer space by looking up into the sky at night. We can't hear that far. We can't smell that far. We can't see that far. We can't taste that far. No, when it comes down to it, though, there are 2 senses that that are a little bit more troublesome. One of them is the sense of smell, and one of them is the sense of hearing. If you're standing, let's say, inside of a bakery and someone's baking bread, you are probably going to be able to smell the bread. You might be able to hear the oven. But what happens if you were to cover up your nose or pinch off your nose? You're not going to be able to smell it anymore. And you may say, well, you're not going to be able to hear it anymore if you close up your ears. Well, you can actually hear through your fingers. You can. Just like if you were to step outside of a convention center, for example, where there's a monster truck race or monster trucks are inside, you're not going to smell the exhaust anymore, but you're definitely going to hear it. That's why sound is so unique, because it is something that takes a lot of effort in order to do it properly. This is one of the reasons why it takes such a great amount of skill to be a sound professional, because you have to think about and you have to untrain your ears to not hear things that to not hear things around you and to ignore the world around you. You have to train yourself to hear those things the same way a microphone does. And you need to be able to hear them in a noisy environment over everything else. And you have to figure out ways of using your other senses to help you to hear things. Like, for example, touching something to detect a vibration, which could indicate that there's a sound there. Things like that. But sound, when you think about it, is a very unique sense, in the sense that you can pick it up and detect it when you're in the same room, line of sight. If you're obscured, even if you're outside, you can detect it. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to control. Directors of photography merely have to put up a fly swatter or put up something to block off the sun. You know, if you're inside of a building, for example, they just black out the windows and you don't see through them anymore. It's all completely black outside. You are going to buy on camera that it's dark outside and that you're shooting this at night. But still, we're going to be hearing it as if it's daytime outside, because even acoustically, things change at night versus day. Part of that's because the heat in the air excites the particles in the air, and it makes things a lot more noisy. So it carries at a farther distance during the day. So if you have a sound that is, you know, in your general area, and this could be a few hundred feet away, that sound is going to carry very well over to your ears, versus at night when the air is more stagnant and cool, and it makes it more difficult for acoustic vibrations to push through and carry. So that's the reason why it's so quiet at night, as long as you're relatively close. I mean, things don't, the sound will not carry nearly as far at night because the air is more stagnant and the particles aren't moving around as excitedly. Now, sound is one of those interesting things where you also have to detect it. You'll also have the ability to detect certain things in certain ways. Like, for example, if you turn on the faucet and it's hot, versus you turn on a faucet and it's cold and you fill up water, there is an acoustic difference in the way that those things sound when it goes into a cup. If you've never heard the difference before, think about it and actually experiment with it. Have someone go over to your sink and turn on the water, you know, not to the point where it's blasting out, but just enough to have a stream go through there, you know, at a pretty decent size, stream at a pretty decent pace, and have them fill up a cup of water and listen to it, and then have them do the same thing if it's cold or hot, you know, the first time, have them reverse it the second time, and you will be able to hear a difference between the hot and cold. I'm not talking about warm and cool, I'm talking about hot and cold. There is a difference, and the way that they sound is definitely different. We're able to detect things with a great amount of detail at a farther distance than with any other sense, except, you know, line of sight, you know, visuals. We are able to detect things at a greater distance obstructed than than other senses. Now, that's not to say that if you go into a completely, concrete barrier, I mean, you're not going to be able to use any of your senses through those. I mean, you're not going to be able to see or hear or anything like that. But if anything, you would be able to detect it acoustically quicker than you would be anything else. That's one of the challenges behind the sound department when you get on set, is trying to pick up all these different sounds and stimuluses that are keeping you from hearing the sounds that you care about. The signal to noise ratio, the sounds you care about versus the sounds you don't care about. It is going to be maximum obscuring your ears if there's a lot of noise and other things, you know, that you're hearing. But there's a lot that you have to do in order to do sound properly, and that is one of the big reasons why. For our second topic, I'm going to answer a question I've received quite often throughout the years, and that is why I use soft side Velcro on the knuckle end of the widest section of my boom pole. Well, it originally started when I was internally straight cabling my boom poles, and I had to run the cable out on the outside and then manage it somehow. What I learned is that if I coiled up the cable and then I simply stuck that on the, wrapped up that coil on the, next to the knuckle of the boom pole, I could easily attach a piece of hard side Velcro to that soft side Velcro and hold it in place. And it would not have extra slack on it. It would hold itself out of a boom box or my boom caddy when I would put it there, because it was up next to the knuckles. Everything is going to be away from that maximum distance. You could put it inside of clamps and all kinds of things. So it was very effective. But then what I learned when I stopped using internal straight cable booms, and this is something I detected before that too, is if I hold a boom over my head, one of the things that's kind of cool about that is as I'm sliding my hand down, I will be able to find the end of the boom pole segment quite effectively by sliding my hand down. And unlike running it into a knuckle, where it makes a clink noise or might end up transferring through some of that vibration, when you hit Velcro, your hand just slides right over it, and actually Velcro will make it quieter, because it's not so much the same as foam does if you route foam on the outside of a boom pole, but it has a similar effect. Soft side Velcro is cloth based, and therefore it kind of absorbs a little bit of the acoustic vibrations that would happen from your hand if you were tapping a boom pole right there. So it actually ends up being a little quieter. It gives you a nice place to hold where you can easily slide your hand off of that if you want to, while you still have the ability to hold it tension-wise when you need to. If you're holding your arms over your head, your muscles shifting all over the place, your hand doesn't slide if you keep it on top of that south side Velcro, but you can still slide your hand off of that quite effectively and easily if you want to. Plus, once you kind of know the distance it is from one side of that Velcro to the other, you're very easily able to rock your hand and slide it over that to grab the section if you need to. So it adds an extra support, just kind of like if you're backing up and you have your boom pole going backwards. If you put a finger out, not straight, because you don't want to run it into a wall straight and jam your finger, but you add a little bit of a curve to it, that way it closes your finger. That right there is louder than it is taking your boom pole and hitting it into a wall. So something like that is beneficial to you as you're sliding your hand, because all of a sudden it would go from perhaps transfer noise on the boom pole itself, if your boom pole does that, all the way to almost completely muffled to you grabbing a section or a segment lock, for example, a knuckle or a lock. So that's the reason why I started to do that, and that's why I still do that, even though I don't really internally my boom cables anymore through my boom poles. Well, there you have it, another episode of the Speed Bumps podcast in the can. It's very interesting because we had sunbeams sticking out when we started the episode, but now it's all gone behind clouds. And at this time of the year, which is spring, it's kind of interesting because you can have days where it is hot all day or cool all day, or you can have days where you have all four seasons in a day. You wake up in the morning and it's quite chilly in the air, frosty even, and there might even be some condensation that freezes up depending on where you are and the humidity and height you are at. But by mid-morning, it's spring temperatures. By the afternoon, it is scorching hot, and by the evening, it is cool like it is in fall. And it's awesome. I love it that time of year. I mean, fall is my favorite time of year. I love that so much. But anyway, I don't need to keep on talking to you. That is for this episode. Thank you for listening. I'll see you again in 2 weeks with yet another episode.
If you'd like to ask a sound-related question to be answered in a future episode, send text, audio, or video to ssp@soundspeeds.us. Want to record this outro? Details in the description below. Find us on social media and online at www.soundspeeds.us. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more sound-related content.